President Trump now announcing new tariffs on the European Union.
I always say tariffs is the most beautiful word to me in the dictionary.
30% tariff on the European Union because of the U.S. trade deficit.
U.S. alliances in Europe, which were once rock solid, are now suddenly fracturing.
President Trump's sweeping global tariffs for more than 90 countries have come into effect.
13 major EU countries have rejected America's latest proposals, sparking fears of lost influence, disrupted trade, and threatened defense partnerships. From Germany's industrial powerhouse to Luxembourg's financial nerve center, these rejections aren't just political, they hit American businesses, workers, and military operations across the continent. Could this be the tipping point where decades of U.S. dominance in Europe start to crumble? Let's break down what's happening, why it matters, and what's next. Germany, Europe's economic powerhouse, has firmly rejected the latest U.S. trade proposals, signaling a major shift in transatlantic relations. With a GDP exceeding $4.5 trillion, Germany isn't just a single country saying no, it's the industrial backbone of Europe. Its automotive sector alone produces more than 4.6 million vehicles annually, supplying brands like Volkswagen, BMW, and Mercedes-Benz to global markets. Precision machinery, chemicals, and industrial equipment from Germany support supply chains worldwide. The U.S. proposals aim to give American companies unprecedented access to these markets, but German officials argued that the terms were fundamentally unbalanced, threatening domestic industries and workers. The repercussions ripple far beyond trade. German defense contracts with American firms, worth billions, face uncertainty, while joint technological projects in areas like renewable energy and advanced manufacturing could stall. For American workers, particularly in Michigan, Alabama, and South Carolina, who rely on German automotive investments, job security is suddenly less certain. Germany's stance underlines a key lesson: economic sovereignty can outweigh diplomatic pressures. As Berlin draws a firm line, France prepares to make a statement of its own, amplifying the European chorus of resistance. France, Europe's second-largest economy, has strongly rejected the recent US-EU trade agreement, labeling it a submission to American demands. Prime Minister François Bayrou criticized the deal as an imbalanced compromise that undermines European sovereignty. The agreement, announced in July 2025, includes a 15% US tariff on most EU goods, while offering zero tariffs on select American exports. French officials argue that this arrangement disproportionately favors the U.S., particularly in sectors like digital services and pharmaceuticals. The French Parliament has expressed concerns over potential job losses and increased consumer prices resulting from the deal. Additionally, France has led opposition to the EU-Mercosur trade agreement, citing environmental and food safety standards as primary concerns. French President Emmanuel Macron has called for a suspension of investments in the U.S. by European companies, urging caution in light of the new tariffs. This stance reflects broader EU apprehensions about the direction of transatlantic trade relations. As France takes a firm stand, Germany prepares to voice its concerns, potentially intensifying the debate over the future of EU-US trade agreements. Italy, long considered the Mediterranean bridge between American and European interests, has now drawn a clear line on U.S. trade proposals, emphasizing national sovereignty over diplomatic convenience. With a GDP of roughly $3.1 trillion and a strong industrial base in automotive, machinery, and luxury goods, Italy's rejection reverberates far beyond its borders. Key ports like Genoa, Trieste, and Naples, which handle millions of tons of American exports annually, now face operational uncertainties, potentially disrupting supply chains that feed both European and African markets. Italian luxury manufacturers, from fashion houses in Milan to high-end machinery producers, have extensive partnerships with American companies. Political friction risks halting production lines and forcing costly realignments. Banking is another critical front. Italy's major financial institutions, deeply interconnected with U.S. banks, may see regulatory and political pressures affecting cross-border transactions worth tens of billions. Historically willing to balance EU and U.S. interests, Italy's firm stance signals a broader European frustration with American demands. As Rome asserts its autonomy, the Netherlands, Europe's primary trade gateway, prepares to deliver its own decisive response, heightening uncertainty for American businesses across the continent. The Netherlands, long regarded as America's most reliable trading partner in Europe, has now added its voice to the chorus of rejection. Rotterdam, Europe's largest port, processes roughly 60% of American goods entering the continent, from electronics and machinery to agricultural products. Political tensions surrounding U.S. trade proposals now cast a shadow over these critical logistics operations, threatening delays, higher costs, and the need for alternative routes that could disrupt supply chains across Europe. Beyond shipping, Dutch financial services, renowned for their stability, regulatory efficiency, and global reach, face potential upheaval, affecting American banks and multinational firms that rely on Amsterdam as a hub for European operations. Dutch innovation and agriculture partnerships, long collaborative with U.S. companies in areas like sustainable farming technology, seed development, and high-tech food processing, also face uncertainty. These disruptions could stall joint research projects and increase costs for American businesses. As the Netherlands asserts its autonomy, the ripple effects extend into defense and technology sectors. With critical logistics and trade channels now under strain, Sweden, a key defense and tech partner, is next to make its position clear, raising stakes for U.S. strategic interests. Sweden, a cornerstone of European technological innovation and defense, has now put U.S. military and strategic plans at risk. For decades, Swedish companies have supplied critical components for American defense systems, from advanced radar networks to specialized communications equipment embedded in military infrastructure. Political rejection of U.S. trade proposals now threatens these partnerships, potentially causing setbacks that could take years to recover, and affecting America's operational readiness in Europe and beyond. Even as Sweden weighs NATO membership, the government is prioritizing technological sovereignty, making clear that alignment with American strategic goals will not come at the expense of national control over critical innovations. Swedish telecom, software, and defense firms, which have long collaborated with U.S. companies, face political uncertainties that could disrupt research, supply chains, and joint development projects. Beyond defense, this stance impacts energy, education, and research collaborations, slowing projects in advanced manufacturing, medical technology, and climate solutions. Sweden's decision highlights a growing European emphasis on autonomy over deference. With these high-tech and defense partnerships in flux, Austria, long a neutral intermediary in European affairs, is poised to deliver its own decisive response, further reshaping transatlantic dynamics. Austria, long celebrated for its neutrality and role as a mediator in European affairs, has now signaled a significant shift away from American influence. Vienna has historically served as a hub for multinational corporations, banking, and diplomatic negotiations, leveraging its neutral status to facilitate trade and political dialogue across Central Europe. With U.S. trade proposals now rejected, American companies face uncertainties in Austrian headquarters operations, financial services, and cross-border investments that have collectively supported billions of dollars in commerce. Austrian tourism and hospitality sectors, which host significant American franchises and attract U.S. visitors, may also see disruptions, affecting revenue streams that have long benefited both nations. Infrastructure projects, often a mix of EU funding and U.S. investment, now confront political and regulatory uncertainties, raising the risk of delays or cost escalations. Austria's traditional role as a neutral ground for multilateral mediation, relied upon for decades in negotiations involving the U.S., Germany, and Eastern European nations, is now compromised. As Vienna recalibrates its stance, Denmark, a historically steadfast American ally, prepares to deliver its own impactful rejection, further signaling the deepening transatlantic divide. Denmark, historically one of America's most reliable military partners, has now stepped back from cooperation, sending shockwaves through both defense and trade sectors. Danish naval and shipping operations, crucial for American access to Arctic waters and northern European markets, face political uncertainties that could disrupt decades of smooth collaboration. Agricultural supply chains are similarly at risk. Denmark processes and distributes significant volumes of American grain, meat, and other food exports to Scandinavian and Northern European markets. The potential disruption of these networks threatens both U.S. farmers and Danish distributors, forcing costly adjustments. Beyond agriculture and logistics, Denmark's thriving biotechnology and pharmaceutical sectors, long engaged in joint research and development with American firms, may encounter delays in critical projects, affecting medical innovation and production timelines. Even the nation's globally recognized design and furniture industries, which rely heavily on U.S. partnerships, face market uncertainties that could influence consumer products across North America and Europe. Denmark's shift highlights a growing European willingness to prioritize sovereignty over historical alliance commitments. As Copenhagen draws back, Poland, a linchpin of Eastern European strategy, prepares to Poland, long considered America's steadfast ally in Eastern Europe, has now signaled a dramatic shift, threatening the U.S. strategy across the region. With defense spending among NATO's highest as a percentage of GDP, Poland has historically relied on American military systems. Yet political disagreements now jeopardize billions in defense contracts. Energy cooperation is also at risk, as Poland sits at the crossroads for pipelines and energy transit between Russia and Western Europe, critical for American energy diversification plans. American agricultural technology and processing partnerships, deeply embedded in Poland's rapidly modernizing farming sector, face potential disruption, threatening both economic and food security interests. Meanwhile, Belgium, host to EU headquarters and NATO command structures, adds another layer of complexity. Brussels has long provided the United States with vital access to European policymaking, lobbying channels, and financial services. By rejecting American proposals, Belgium introduces uncertainty into logistics, supply chains, and strategic coordination, potentially affecting operations across Europe. Financial institutions, transportation hubs, and regulatory frameworks that American companies rely on now face political pressure, forcing costly contingency plans. As Poland and Belgium recalibrate, Finland's unique geopolitical position sets the stage for the next critical test of U.S. influence in Europe. Finland, with its unique position in the Arctic and advanced technological sectors, has now pulled back from key American partnerships. Its expertise in cold weather operations, telecommunications, and renewable energy technology has long supported U.S. defense and energy projects. Finnish companies provide specialized components for Arctic operations, energy storage systems, and sustainable industrial processes, all of which American firms have heavily invested in. Political rejection threatens these collaborations, potentially forcing costly adjustments and slowing projects critical to energy security and northern defense strategies. Finland's careful balance between East and West now emphasizes technological sovereignty, even as NATO membership discussions continue, signaling a shift in regional priorities. Meanwhile, Spain, historically the gateway to Latin American markets for American companies, has also stepped back. Spanish banks and financial institutions, which facilitate billions in cross-continental transactions, now face political uncertainties that could disrupt operations. Tourism, hospitality, and defense cooperation are likewise affected, with American franchises and military facilities in Spain encountering potential obstacles. Agricultural exports, particularly olive oil, wine, and other specialty products, may also face delays. With Finland's Arctic expertise and Spain's Latin American connections constrained, U.S. strategic reach in both northern and southern hemispheres is significantly weakened. Norway, one of the world's largest energy exporters, has now tightened the screws on U.S. strategic interests. Its vast Arctic territories and offshore resources have been central to American energy security plans, including access to liquefied natural gas, offshore drilling technology, and shipping routes essential for global operations. Political rejection of U.S. proposals threatens decades of carefully cultivated partnerships, potentially forcing American energy firms to pay premium prices for alternative sources and restructuring logistics that span multiple continents. Norway's advanced shipping industry, which handles critical volumes of American cargo, now faces uncertainty, affecting trade flows across Europe and beyond. Additionally, Norway's strategic Arctic position is increasingly important as climate change opens new shipping lanes and resource opportunities, heightening the impact of reduced cooperation. Luxembourg, though small in size, delivers a blow with even greater systemic consequences. Hosting the headquarters of more U.S. multinationals per capita than any other European country, Luxembourg serves as a hub for regulatory compliance, tax structures, and European operations. Political rejection here threatens to unravel hundreds of billions in structured investments, disrupt corporate governance, and undermine American influence across EU financial networks. From multinational banking to data infrastructure, the fallout could force a complete restructuring of U.S.-European operations.